Age Tech Innovators.
Welcome to Age Tech Innovators, the podcast where we explore how technology is transforming the way we care for our aging population. I'm Monty, your host, and each week we chat with inspiring leaders who are making a real difference in the lives of older adults, sharing innovations and ideas that help support and uplift those who need it most. Join us as we work together to build a brighter, more caring future for everyone involved. Now, let's dive in. I'm with Shea today and really excited to hear your perspectives. Shea, can you give me a rundown of who you are and what you do in 60 seconds?
Absolutely. Monty, thank you for having me today. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Shea Gregg, and I am a practicing trauma surgeon as well as a chair of a department of surgery in a very busy trauma center in Connecticut in the USA. But I'm also the founder and president of FallCall Solutions, which is a company that has really tried to change the medical alert industry by making your cell phone the centerpiece for safety as opposed to base stations and other sort of traditional communication devices. So I carry two hats, Monty, and they are both very busy, but I can tell you they both inspire each other.
Oh, that's really great. I already have a bit of an idea based on your medical background, but what brought you into working into the health or into the age tech space from working in your trauma department? What was the journey?
Absolutely. So I've been practicing as a surgeon for about, I hate to say it, 21 or 22 years now. My patients really were the inspiration. And in the United States and actually around the world, as we see in the trauma bays, the most common trauma that we respond to as trauma surgeons, emergency medicine doctors, et cetera, is the older adult who falls on anticoagulation because anticoagulation is being used for such conditions as atrial fibrillation and other reasons. And the three most common injuries that we see include hip fractures, rib fractures, and head injuries. And unfortunately, back in 2012, 13, 14, I was seeing these older adults who were on the ground for hours. And I always would ask them, why don't you have a medical alert system? And many of them would actually say, I do, but it embarrasses me. Or I just didn't have it on me that day. So I started to wonder, is there a better way that we can create a medical alert system? And at that time, 2015, Apple Watch came out. I was extremely inspired. And taking my coding experience back in fourth grade and building different programs back then, I basically literally woke up one day and said, let's start a company in 2015 and build the next generation of medical alert communication on Apple Watch, iPhone. And that has led to the FallCall solution concept and the vision of really changing the industry.
People listening right now will be really curious about how someone goes from an idea to have an actual product that is supporting real people. Can you run me through, especially as you used your elite fourth grade coding skills, can you run me through how you went from your idea to actually having it in the hands of your first users?
Absolutely. So first of all, I would say of any sort of personality trait that it takes to start a business, especially in age tech, is curiosity. And curiosity, I have a lot of it. I've always had it as a child, I'm told by my mother. I just started asking questions. I asked questions in the trauma bay of the patients. And these were standard questions that we were supposed to ask. Why are you wearing your medical alert? What bothers you about medical alert? So I had front lines experience with these patients that were really struggling with this technology that's been around for 20, 30, 40 years, depending. That's when literally I started the company. And I've been toying with the idea for months on how we can make it better and about medical alert systems. And I just started to do market research. The curiosity came out and I realized that there was really no digital-based solution. And I also saw the future of mobile technology uptake. More and more, I saw this incredible trend that was happening where more and more older adults were adopting smartphones. More and more adults were actually adopting wearables. Our first decision to get in the marketplace was to build a simple app. And that's called Elder Check, which we just actually launched in England and the UK a couple weeks ago. And that actually started to pick up a lot of steam. We have thousands of users using that, which was a simple check-in. It's a wellness check-in app that addresses social isolation. This was back in 2016. It took us a year to build it. Once we figured that, wait a minute, this is being used by older adults and their caregivers. Why don't we go in and build the medical alert system? So that's when I got my funding. I started I built my fall detection algorithm, patented it, and got it onto the world's most popular smartwatch. And I had incredible backers, incredible inspiration from my patients. And that's what continues to drive us forward now that we are located, I think, on 4 continents and in 7 countries with our different apps. So it's how do you find what stimulated it? Curiosity. What maintained it was inspiration. And you have to find that inspiration from not only the people around you, because obviously being an entrepreneur has its challenges, but the inspiration of your caregivers and older adults in my case. You just got to keep on going. That's got to drive you.
That's really cool to see how it's a combination of personal experience and just general curiosity in life. The core understanding or the core view that there's a growth in adoption in people using phones and how the phone can be the centerpiece towards care rather than buttons, rather than boxes, and rather than other centralized units. How does this view help you and help you look forward for the next 20, 30 years? Because the population of elderly people is set to double by 2050. How do you view your innovations fixing this gap, and how do you see there being other gaps arising as this happens?
Oh, I think it's amazing what we've seen in the last 5 years when it comes to the uptake and use of this technology with mobile phones in the older adult population. FallCall is a member of AARP Age Tech Collaborative. We were the second cohort that was brought into the Age Tech Collaborative. It used to be called AARP Innovation Labs. And they do research every year, and they come out with a tech report for older adults. And what we were seeing over our early indoctrination into this organization, in AARP's 38 million members, maybe 39 million members, they provide special discounts for older adults, et cetera, in the United States. And it is probably one of the world's largest older adult networks that provides a lot of benefits for the older adults and caregivers as well. And what we were seeing is this uptake of technology, and we start to see it in the 60 plus, because they break it down by 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus. And every year we were seeing more and more uptake in as far as the percentage of users who are participating in their surveys in each one of those categories. And first of all, it started out in the 50 plus. Then it started to increase in the 60 plus, and is now between all the categories, you're looking at over 80% of people owning smartphones over the age of now 70. And we see it increasing yearly. So we bet on that early on. And wearable technology, also the uptake of wearable technology in this population is as vigorous as it is in the teenage population. Interesting.
Wow. Okay.
So between those two facts, I strongly believe that in addition to market data now that we're starting to see that the wearables that are out there, Apple Watch and other things, are starting to replace or take the place of medical alert devices. I strongly believe that the mobile phone will be your centerpiece with the best antennas, the best communication, et cetera. Over the next 5-10 years, it will very much replace, I think, in a very cost-effective manner, these standard hardware solutions that have existed in the medical alert world for about 40 years now.
It sounds like that innovation is driven, or that change will be driven by the desires of the end service users. The service users want to start to adopt things that suit them best. What do you think the biggest challenge is for the service users to actually getting the things that they want most? As in, what's blocking the service user from getting the phone-based centralized response unit versus the button in a box that they all have right now?
And you're referring more to the industry itself or the end user?
The industry. What do you think's the challenge for the industry?
We honestly believe, and when we came on the market with FallCall first back in 2018, we were selling a UFO. I can explicitly say, where it's this brand new concept that your phone can be your medical alert system. And especially with Apple Watch at the time being the primary modality of calling for help, which would contact the phone, et cetera. The model that has existed for years is we sell hardware, we sell subscription, which triggers recurrent monthly revenue, RMR. It works. It works. People do buy this. The target market tends to be an average age of about 79 years old, depending on which part of the world we're in. They say that you have a large company if you have 500 users. And many resellers will buy this technology that's already integrated, and it's a very straightforward model. It can be very lucrative depending on your size, and it's worked for 40 years. So what I am bringing to the market in this concept, and very few other people are doing it, because tell you the truth, programming on these mobile platforms and wearable platforms is challenging given their changes. But what I'm bringing to the market is the concept of, one, we can save you money. We can save you money in subscriptions. Two, we can integrate into these central monitor systems, literally. In Australia, I think it took us 5 to 6 weeks of coding to do it. So that is unknown to the general industry. And this concept of, we've done this for so long and it works so well, why do we need to change it? I hate to say it, the population's changing. I see it. And I'm on the front lines with it every day. And I still am talking, when I talk to my patients, why were you on the floor for 2 hours? And we have a medical alert, but we're embarrassed to use it. But if they do have a mobile phone, and many times they're crawling to their mobile phone to try to call for help if they can with a broken hip or ribs or head injury. I think that it is literally, from a worldwide perspective, from our partners in Australia, and we have a pilot running in another country as well. I believe that people are starting to catch on and understand that this mobile phone is the future. We're going to be right there with them, that you can download an end-to-end solution with monitoring and all the things medical alerts have, will provide that same level of service.
I appreciate that insight. In terms of, if we fast forward the clocks 50 years and suddenly you wake up and you look down and you're an elderly body, what technology, in addition to your phone, do you think you would like to use to live independently for as long as possible? What would you personally like to use in 50 years' time?
Sure. So I am very excited about where this industry is going, especially when you get a look at the startups, Monty, which you speak to, I'm sure, on a weekly basis, who are truly trying to change the narratives around traditional industry models. I believe that we need to, at least from a medical alert standpoint, we need to become a proactive platform instead of a reactive platform. The reality of medical alerts is that a person gets injured, and then they call for help. We need to be there before they get injured. We need to address the social determinants of health, whether it's loneliness, which actually can have secondary medical effects, leading is anywhere from dementia to death. So we have to deal with the social isolation component, the wellness components, the community components, the cost challenges associated with medical alerts, et cetera. And we need to be there with these technologies that can passively take your heart rate and tell you that you have an irregular heart rate. We have to build AI that could potentially make diagnoses based on vital signs and other things that could be picked up from these modalities that are either worn on your wrist or passively through radar and other sort of modalities. So if we can transform the industry, at least the medical alert industry, into a proactive platform that could alert caregivers, alert older adults, then I think that would be the most exciting. And then ultimately you can get people to help quicker, saying that there might be a risk of something, as opposed to I've already been injured, I've already sustained the injury. It's almost like digital prevention. It's a digital prevention component. And I think we'll get there. We have some things and I think some other big companies have some ideas, and we just have to run with it and really scale it.
What do you think will happen to these companies that aren't leaning into the proactive preventative space? You mentioned that we've seen 40 years of a very similar button in the boxes. What do you think will happen to businesses that aren't pushing or leaning into it?
We've had some very large businesses in the United States. Blockbuster was a traditional company that basically had when you got your video and you put it in and then you returned it. And if you didn't rewind it, then they charge you a fee. So you get some additional refund from that. And that was actually a significant amount of income for the company. Kodak, another company that really focused on the cameras and photos, etc. Then all of a sudden you have these digital solutions that come along that sort of mature. Netflix from the streaming component, and phone-based cameras that have amazing picture quality and the ability to edit pictures. So when you fail to innovate, then I believe that you will ultimately fall out of favor. What I can say from the medical alert companies that I'm dealing with, at least in the United States, and hearing bits and pieces around the world, if you don't lean into the AI, if you don't lean into the proactive platforms, which they're starting to at this point, they're starting to understand that this is really a health-based product. and as opposed to a reactive, I just need help, a remote for help call. If they don't do that, I think that the ones that do, that stay ahead of the curve, I think that they will honestly fade away. I really do believe that.
The Blockbuster analogy is a really nice one, and I think it's something that we can all relate to, so I appreciate that. My last question, and I've learned a lot today, so thank you, and I think our listeners will find it really helpful. Last question is, there's clearly a big need for innovation to support this growing population. What would you say, what advice would you give to people who are curious and just starting out on their journey to enter this space?
Absolutely. So I think one, don't quit your day job. You will hear people say all the time, oh, you're not completely committed to your startup, so therefore we're not going to fund you. You're still working your day job. How can you potentially really scale and build out your solution? I've heard this for years when it comes to funding and other things. It's just, oh, if you're not all in, we're not going to fund you. Okay, fine. But as a physician, it makes me a better entrepreneur because I understand the needs of my users. And many times people are inspired either by families in the space, they're inspired by maybe some of the clients they're working with, and then they will come up with a solution because they find a hole in the market. So I would say, first off, don't quit your day job because there's a very high chance of failure. We have to call it out. But B, this will give you continued data free of charge and a better understanding so you can really develop that empathy in the design of your product. So that's one aspect. And then two, when you do start heading down the funding component, hold on to your equity to the best of your ability. And if you can start with friends and family, a couple $1,000s or whatever it might take, or pounds, obviously back home there, it's try to hold on to your equity for as long as possible. And if you can do that, it's until you really need to scale, then you would need the heavy duty funding. And the last thing I will say is that there are so many opportunities in the SaaS world, in the software services world, is that if you can develop a tech solution, remember, it's only code, and it's code written from the brain. And it does take time if you don't have that ability. Granted, I stopped coding when I was in 4th grade, as I mentioned earlier. But at the same time, if you can come up with a tech solution, that's just code, all right? And you can make it into something that's brilliant. And it sits out there in the ether, it sits in the cloud, it sits on GitHub, it sits on a variety of platforms. But it's not something where you have production costs, you have warehouse costs, you have drop shipping costs, etc. When you start to consider these things, don't quit your day job, stick with friends and family early on for your funding and hold on to your equity, and really start to consider the software-based solutions that have some of these newer technologies and AI, etc., that are based around code. Then I believe that people can build some really successful businesses, and to consider that as they start out. You don't need to be a coder in 4th grade to do it.
A 2nd grade is sufficient.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine, honestly. That's probably where my knowledge base ended. So
4th grade was just parties.
exactly. That's when I was actually writing some fun things in BASIC. So
Oh, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really valuable to hear your insights and your thoughts, and I really look forward to catching up in America.
looking forward to it, Monty. All the success to you. Thank you.
Likewise, catch you. Bye.
Bye-bye.